What's happening, gang? You are back live in the Secret Stash, tracking down some cool local people, talking about some important local stuff. Who knows, maybe catch a story or two with the goal of leaving you better than how we found you. I'm your host, Jesse Ibanez, co-founder of the Greenhouse Group, helping folks get into and out of homes. That's our game. You can check us out and what we do down at thegreenhousegroupinc.com. And we're hanging out in the Stash today with Kenneth Stone of Stone Law Group. You can catch him at thestonelawgroup.net. We got Ken in because he's a local expert on real estate litigation. We wanted to try to figure out if we can leave Stash Nation a little better on how to avoid litigation and then how to deal with it when it happens. And if you want to catch us on the rebroadcast, by the way, over at secretstashradio.com, we're going to have this whole thing uploaded on YouTube by the end of the week. And who knows, you might even be streaming live right now on the Meerkat app. Squeeze in a question for Ken before we wrap up here in about 10 minutes. So, Ken, we talked about, the greatest hits. What are the things you see most often come across your desk when things go wrong? We talked about some ideas, some very good ideas, by the way, some things that I didn't think about of how buyers and sellers can avoid litigation, some due diligence, some extra investigation, etc. And then we talked about the weeds of the whole mediation, litigation, mediation, arbitration, liquidated damages clauses inside your contract. So what's the one thing then, Ken? What's the thing you want to leave us with? Like, what if you had some parting knowledge for our group? What would you say?
Well, I'd say the most important thing for a buyer in a real estate transaction is to build the right team, and that probably starts with getting a very knowledgeable real estate agent to represent you. I knew you'd like that.
That's a self-serving ding. Yeah.
No, but somebody who's not only experienced but familiar with the neighborhood that you're buying in. Because as we discussed earlier, for instance, if you're buying a home in Spring Valley, it's nice to have an agent who's familiar with that area because they know what some of the potential problems are that you can be on the lookout for.
Yeah, well said.
Also important to have other team members working for you, a good home inspector or potentially sometimes a general contractor. And if necessary, a lawyer or even a CPA if there are tax issues involved. Give
yourself a point for that. Absolutely. Now, let me go back and backtrack just for a second. You said home inspector, and then you mentioned contractor. That's an interesting little juxtapose there. You mind exploring that a little bit?
Well, my understanding is that home inspectors are experienced with home inspections, but they aren't necessarily general contractors.
Correct.
Depending on what you're buying and where you're buying, sometimes it's advantageous to have somebody who's actually a general contractor involved, who may do something more than what a home inspection entails. It really just is condition driven, but sometimes you have issues that are important enough to have a more specialized kind of contractor look at.
The way that I have always loved, actually, our home inspector, I like to tell our clients we've been through the rest to get to the best. We go with an outfit here in town called John Robinson Inspection Group. They're great. By the way, you can check them out on Rep. You said reputable, and that's another great little tool. Luckily, we got all these review sites now. You can go on Yelp. You can cipher through all the restaurant stuff and find actually that they've got real estate on there. They've got home inspectors and stuff on there. But they're more like general practitioners. They're like your family doctor. They come in, they check stuff out. Ooh, I see something here. This isn't good. Let me get you to a specialist, right? And that's why a contractor is a critical element to have on that team because you have a very short due diligence process. It may look on paper like it's long because it's 21 days, but there's a lot that happens in that 21 days. And you'd be amazed at how fast that 17th day comes up where normally they want all your investigations taken care of. And a lot of times you'll go into a house and there'll be like a wall there, and because it's like a mid-century little bungalow, and June and Ward Cleaver were cooking and eating in different rooms and stuff, and they want that blown out, they want that open, they want the new open floor plan. To have somebody on your squad to come in there quickly and be able to decipher, actually, no, that's an incredibly involved project. That's a load-bearing wall, etc. Or no, you could totally wipe these out. Everything's hanging on the sidewalls, etc. All that stuff is critical. A home inspector's not going to be able to get you there.
That's right.
They're going to talk about things that are broken that need to get fixed, like your appliances and rest of the general stuff, right?
True. And that's why a more experienced contractor is sometimes advantageous to have. That sort of dovetails with what I talked about earlier as far as also the buyer, him or herself, asking more questions or talking to neighbors to find out if they know what remodeling was done to the property.
Well said, yeah. To be able to, inside that due diligence process, go down and check it out with the county, see if any permits were pulled. It's pretty obvious to be able to tell with an experienced eye whether work has been done. when you've seen enough of these, you know what they're supposed to look like and how quickly they can be amalgamated. So that's a big part of the discovery process. What else? Anything else? Like what if it's in an HOA or something?
Well, I think it's really important to look at the homeowners association documents for a number of things. These generally disclose whether there's been previous litigation involving the homeowners association as a whole, which could lead to discovery of prior construction defect litigation. And you also want to look at the budget because oftentimes you'll find that homeowners associations don't have the reserves they're supposed to have. If you move into a complex like that, you could find yourself in a situation where there's going to be a special assessment you didn't know about ahead of time because the association was underfunded. So it's really important to look over those documents as well.
Especially over the last, what would you say, Ken, decade? You know, since everything kind of went foo-foo there for a while, all of a sudden, miraculously, there was litigations all over the complexes around town, right?
That's true. I mean, it's sort of unavoidable that there are always problems that are going to come up, and you'll find very few homeowners associations that don't have some history of litigation. Yeah,
it's well said. And that's also a lot of the reason why a lot of developers are moving towards apartments now because of the, what is it? Isn't it like a 10 or a 20-year ability for people to sue retroactively?
The statute, it's called the statute of repose on construction defects, are generally 10 years from the date the property was completed or the notice of completion was filed.
Yeah.
So if you don't discover it within the first 10 years, oftentimes you're not going to have recourse.
Yeah, fair enough. And come on, how many things go ever so slightly wrong within the first 10 years, especially when you're slapping them together and things dry and cool and twist and shrink and stuff like that, right?
Well, it's a good point. Actually, what I recommend is if you're in a newer home and you're getting close to that 10-year period, it's not a bad idea to have an inspection done at that time just to make sure there's something you're not aware of that someone else can't discover for you so that you don't lose your legal rights to pursue it.
Well said, my man. That's why we got Kenneth Stone in the house. Ken has been practicing law here locally since 1978. So when we talk about tracking down some cool local people, talking about some important local stuff, definitely, Ken, so grateful to have you hanging out today, leaving us all, including myself, a little better than how you found us, dropping some knowledge. You want to talk to Ken privately about anything that may have come up for you over the course of the last hour. I'd recommend going and checking him out online first, maybe giving him a call right away. That phone number, Ken, is 619-233-1818. I'll give that number one more time. It's 619-233-1818. And you're located down in the heart of San Diego, right? Down in downtown?
Right outside the gas lamp.
Right outside the gas lamp on Broadway, right?
That's right, between 6 and 7.
Then the address is?
624 Broadway, Suite 303.
Suite number 303. Just as sweet as my man Ken for hanging out here, leaving us all a little better than how he found us. Real estate litigation, gang, how to avoid it when it happens, and how to avoid it in the first place, I better say, and then how to deal with it when it happens. Ken, I appreciate you, my man.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
If somebody wants to come check you out, Little Birdie told me that you have a free consultation that you might offer. Is that true?
That's right. We provide an initial free consultation and to see if we can assist you.
Very cool. So that typically is like, 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour?
That's right.
Yeah. And again, that was not just for real estate, even though we spent most of the bucket on today. That was also civil litigation, probate, and business litigation, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
We handle a wide variety, but we focus in the real estate, business, and probate areas.
Sounds good, my man. That's, again, Kenneth Stone, Stone Law Group, thestonelawgroup.net. Coming up, gang, second hour in the stash. We're going to be hanging out with Mark of Float Spa San Diego. You're not going to want to miss this, too. We're going to talk about floating. Trust me, personal development gurus, who knows, meditation experts, people who have PTSD, you name it, man. We're going to be talking about it next hour. We'll be right back.